At 11.
This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting. Good evening. No jail time for Michael Deaver. President and Nancy Reagan's longtime friend and former top White House aide was sentenced today for lying under oath to government investigators about his lobbying business. CBS News law correspondent Rita Braver reports on the sentence Deaver didn't get and the one he did.
You could see the relief in Michael Deaver's face. He could have been sentenced to up to 15 years in jail for lying to a federal grand jury and a congressional committee about his lobbying activities. But Deaver is a free man. A federal judge put him on probation for 3 years and ordered him to pay $100,000 in fines and perform 1,500 hours of community service.
I think a sentence like that stinks. I think that it is wrong.
The sentence was a direct rebuff to independent counsel Whitney North Seymour, who had argued for a jail term, saying it was an important symbol to the American public. Deaver all along blamed his lies on his severe drinking problem, and today he did not admit committing a crime, did not apologize. He did say the case had changed my life, forced me to come to grips with a worse demon, alcoholism.
I know that alcoholism affected my life for a good long period of my life.
Judge Thomas Penfield Jackson, however, said the light sentence was not based on the alcoholism issue, but on his belief that Deaver would never commit a similar crime. The judge said Deaver loyally and ably and honorably served the President of the United States, and that Deaver probably lied in part because he knew his new occupation as a lobbyist was not worthy of him, even if lawful. Despite the reprieve, Deaver was still claiming innocence and will appeal.
I think it was a very fair sentence if I'd been guilty.
The chairman of the committee that Deaver lied to says the sentence sends the wrong message.
The fellow who lies to Congress, lies to a congressional committee empowered and impaneled to inquire into his behavior, lies to a grand jury, gets away without any time. Whereas a citizen who might steal a Social Security check, joyride in a car, get caught with a few grams of marijuana, is very likely to go to jail.
But Deaver's old boss, President Reagan, today said, "I've always believed he didn't do anything wrong." A seemingly disgruntled independent counsel packed up his bags.
I'm going back to New York, practice law.
Rita Braver, CBS News, Washington.
Michael Dukakis and George Bush practiced their separate strategies in private today for what's being called a debate Sunday night. Actually, it will be more of a simple joint appearance or controlled small news conference than a debate. But whatever you want to call it, both sides see it as crucial. Bob Schieffer, covering the Bush campaign, begins our look at prepping the candidates.
When you're ahead in the polls, photos with important visitors like today's shot with the Soviet foreign minister can be heaven. But debates can be real trouble, a place to make costly mistakes. When Bush's people try to lower expectations, they're following classic front-runner strategy.
He's not a professional debater. He's made that point. He's not a lawyer, but I think he feels comfortable.
In fact, Bush did quite well during the primary debates. When reporters accused him of failing to answer Iran-Contra questions, he responded in kind.
Your paper today had that question raised as if I hadn't answered it, and I resent it, frankly, and I think that you owe me now. You owe it.
And remember, he creamed Pete DuPont by just using his given name.
Pierre, let me help you on some of this.
Hoping he'll be that relaxed Sunday, advisors say he's doing the usual.
Reviewing a briefing book that contains material with respect to the likely issues to be raised and discussed, participating in at least one mock debate session.
Standing in for Michael Dukakis during the practice runs is investment banker Dick Darman, an old White House hand. From media coach Roger Ailes, the main advice is stick with familiar themes. For the frontrunner, objectives are limited.
He wants to come across as presidential, to have command of his subject matter, and to avoid costly errors.
So expect nothing breathtakingly new from Bush. He'll stick with what's worked thus far. Bob Schieffer, CBS News, Washington.
Just like a red side. How many reporters and cameramen does it take to watch a middle-aged presidential candidate and the Boston Red Sox center fielder play catch at 8:30 in the morning? About 50. To be fair, Ellis Burks and his teammates have an important series with the Yankees starting tonight. But were there debate portents?
Not quite the control I used to have.
What did he mean by that? In fact, there were a lot of sports metaphors flying around. Bill Bradley, New Jersey Senator, former New York Knick, is among those who've been helping Dukakis prepare.
Well, if you want to know what advice I gave him, I told him to take the open shot and play tough defense.
Dukakis has been practicing in a room on the 22nd floor of this hotel, a room aides say George Bush once slept in. They do not take Bush lightly.
We expect it to be a very tough debate, a very competitive debate. And he will be very well scripted by Roger Ailes and his media gurus.
Today, aides say Dukakis has been practicing answering mock questions, getting advice from advisors on how those answers might be changed and strengthened. They haven't, the aides say, had a full dress rehearsal yet, but part of the room is set up as a kind of TV studio, and they expect to use it, stage a mock debate, videotape it, watch the results. If Dukakis follows all the advice he's getting, he'll be strong but not too strong, witty but not silly, profound but not pompous, sort of an everyday mix, you might say, of Plato, Shakespeare, Abe Lincoln, and the guy next door. Dan?
Thanks, Bruce. We'll see you Sunday night. Bush, Dukakis, and their advisors are well aware that these joint appearances can help them win or cost them the election. CBS News National Affairs correspondent Leslie Stahl looks now at how style, substance, and public perception affect who wins and who loses.
1960, the first presidential debate on television. Voters listening on radio think Nixon wins. They don't see him looking haggard and nervous. TV viewers say Kennedy wins. 1980, Reagan scores a knockout with a one-liner.
There you go again.
Reagan does it again in '84. After stumbling in the first debate, is he too old to be reelected?
I will not make age an issue of this campaign. I am not going to exploit for political purposes my opponent's youth and inexperience.
And now here we go again. From the campus of Wake Forest University in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, another presidential debate, the first of two. If you talk to the two campaigns, you'd think it was the Olympics, the Super Bowl, the heavyweight championship, and in a way it is. It could change this presidential election overnight.
A candidate could be made or broken, or more likely, both of them could pass the threshold of legitimacy.
The two sides have agreed the candidates will stand behind adjustable lecterns. Dukakis, shorter than Bush, may stand on a riser hidden by a rug. They'll be questioned by a panel of 4 television and print reporters. The format tightly controlled. 2-minute answers followed by 1-minute rebuttals, period. No follow-up questions, no quizzing each other, no give and take.
These are very staged events, and I think anybody that says they're not is kidding themselves.
In the final analysis, what they want to do is put the biggest safety net around their candidate they can and minimize mistakes.
That's because one big mistake could mean the election. Ask Jerry Ford.
There is no Soviet domination of Eastern Europe, and there never will be under a Ford administration.
Dukakis cannot afford a mistake on foreign affairs or anything that suggests that he doesn't command a sense of government.
Television advisors say Dukakis needs to rediscover the warmer, wittier image he used to project when he was the moderator of a public television show.
Mr. Mondale's.
The Bush campaign says the vice president must purge himself of the gestures and rambling, exuberant style of his '84 debate with Geraldine Ferraro.
If for 60 years that's the way you talked, it's very difficult to get all those things out of your natural vocabulary. And under pressure, they might all come back in.
Both candidates have cut back on campaigning to plot and rehearse, hoping they can pull off the moment everyone will talk about afterwards, as Walter Mondale did during the primaries 4 years ago.
Where's the beef?
Yeah. I can tell you where's the beef was written ahead of time, yeah, because I wrote it. But but it was something that we'd set up Gary Hart for that line.
Of such things are presidential debates made and remembered. Quips, gaffes, goofs, and bags under the eyes. The little things.
We spent more time talking about ties than I think we talked about East-West relations.
Even post-debate events are choreographed. The two campaigns will deploy squadrons of aides known as spin doctors to persuade reporters that their man sounded stronger, made more sense, didn't stumble, did soar. The campaigns believe that what's said afterwards is as important as the debate itself. Leslie Stahl, CBS News, Winston-Salem.
By the way, they decided on a striped tie. And still to come on tonight's CBS Evening News, Gary Reeves out of Chicago and Detroit on the burning question about Ford ambulances. And Mark Phillips on the race to be the world's fastest man.
All these women lost weight at Diet Center. If you want to lose weight, call the weight loss professionals at Diet Center.
This hammer is twice as strong as this hammer. Tums EX is twice as strong as Rolaids, so Tums neutralizes twice the stomach acid. Tums EX, twice as strong as Rolaids.
You're on your way.
The company that gave me a summer job in Louisiana last year has sent me to Germany this year. And we've got an interesting challenge. Getting a special product to people who need it all over the world. It's used in formulating medical compounds that fight heart disease, high blood pressure, and more. Hard to imagine a college senior working on a project like this. But I found one company willing to give a young person a chance.
Dow lets you do great things.
Why, I like stovetop instead. I'll never forget the first time I made my husband stovetop stuffing instead of potatoes. He loved those breadcrumbs and spices so much, he got carried away. And so did I. Right to the gazebo.
Stovetop instead.
Another election year clash over U.S. trade policy today. The House gave final congressional approval to a bill restricting textile, apparel, and shoe imports. This legislation is aimed at protecting U.S. goods and jobs. President Reagan says the bill invites foreign retaliation and has promised that he will veto it. The president met today at the White House with the Soviet foreign minister and with the Reagan administration going into its final months. Bill Plant reports there is a different mood in U.S.-Soviet relations.
President Reagan, in what may be his last official meeting with the top Soviet official, welcomed Foreign Minister Shevardnadze in an atmosphere of mutual congratulation for past accomplishments, ignoring the fact that there appears little hope for any new breakthroughs in arms control.
I think on virtually every subject that we have discussed, we have made sizable progress.
We have a very good relationship. We have been able to achieve very much over the last few years.
But at this point, the two sides are left stressing the importance of continuity in the absence of progress. And Secretary of State Schultz conceded that further progress on arms control isn't coming easily.
I never rule things out, but it's certainly quite improbable. I suppose the basic reason we haven't got there is that it's very difficult.
Mr. Reagan is trying to turn his improved relations with the Soviets into a political advantage, telling a rally in Florida earlier today that it was his defense buildup which brought the Soviets to the bargaining table.
If the history books are honest, they'll say the Soviets did business because they knew we meant business.
Foreign Minister Shevardnadze, who may have done a little politicking of his own by meeting with the vice president but not with Michael Dukakis, pointedly talked of stability in relations between the superpowers.
I think the vice president will agree. That was that we want both to preserve the existing level in Soviet-US relations and to go further on a course of stabilizing and normalizing our relations.
The only bright spot, some optimism that an agreement on human rights could lead to talks on conventional weapons in Europe before the end of Mr. Reagan's term. But another meeting between the president and Soviet leader Gorbachev isn't likely, unless, as some of Mr. Reagan's advisors are daring to hope, the two men were to win the Nobel Peace Prize. Bill Plant, CBS News, the White House.
Following President Reagan's talks with the Soviet foreign minister today, the Soviets have made a human rights deal with the United States. They've agreed to release 36 prisoners the U.S. says have been held for their political and religious beliefs.
Wow.
What you eating, babe?
Nothing, honey.
Oh, you can tell me.
Kellogg's Nut and Honey Crunch. So what makes it taste so good?
Nothing, honey.
Kellogg's Nut and Honey Crunch.
Looks good, Private. What is it?
Nut and honey. You love the honey, you love the nuts.
When you've got the special taste of nuts and honey all wrapped up in a hearty crunch, what more can you say?
Looks good, Sergeant. What is it?
Kellogg's Nut and Honey.
Nut and honey.
Crunch.
You can depend on AT&T Long Distance thanks to the remarkable people who put our equipment to the test.
I love wrecking things. This is a special laboratory. Here we create disasters. One disaster right after another. Why do we do all this? Once we understand how these things can destroy long-distance service, we can build equipment that'll stand up to it.
We're reaching further to bring your world closer.
Yeah, the storm's over.
AT&T, the right choice.
Mom sure make life easier. Mine did. Like another mom, Phillips Milk of Magnesia. Phillips Mom helps your body work naturally for easy overnight relief. Even has this convenient dosage cup. Nobody treats you better than Mom.
How could Thompson's water seal be improved? It's great already. Well, Thompson's could apply itself, but we've improved Thompson's with 50% more active ingredients for more waterproofing power on wood, brick, and concrete. Thompson's, the first name and lasting protection.
In Pensacola, Florida today, a court-martial panel found a U.S. Navy rescue swimmer instructor guilty in the drowning of a panic-stricken recruit. Petty Officer Second Class Michael Combe of Tempe, Arizona, was convicted of negligent homicide and conspiracy to commit battery. The panel heard testimony that Combe repeatedly dunked 19-year-old recruit Lee Marecki during a training exercise in a naval station swimming pool. 4 companies and 2 individuals, all former owners of Ford Econoline vans, filed a class action suit against Ford Motor Company this week. The suit, filed in Denver, alleges that a recall of the vans was improperly handled. Last year, CBS News reporter Gary Reeves looked at charges that those Ford vans tend to burst into flames sometimes. Ford has consistently denied any wrongdoing. Here is Reeves' follow-up report on the recall.
After 3 recalls, ambulances and vans built by the Ford Motor Company are still catching fire. An ambulance that was repaired caught fire at a hospital in Madison, Wisconsin, and caused $300,000 worth of damage.
They didn't solve the problem. We went through 3 recalls thinking that our ambulances were safe, and evidently, we still had a major fire.
After 30 fires last year, Ford voluntarily recalled 90% of the nation's ambulances and almost 200,000 heavy-duty vans. The company says its modifications have stopped the fires that start because the fuel tanks are so close to the hot exhaust pipes. But critics disagree.
We are aware of at least 6 ambulances that have caught fire, fuel system fires, after having been repaired. And we're aware of 5 vans in which the same thing has happened.
They're all individual circumstances, all of which we think are explainable by other factors. So we perceive that, in fact, the fix does work.
Ford blames the fires on maintenance problems the owners are responsible for, like burned-out mufflers. But critics say the recalls were mismanaged. They predict more fires because there are still more than 100,000 vans that have not been fixed. For example, in Colorado, 2 shuttle bus drivers were severely burned when their ski van blew up after they opened the gas cap.
Before I knew it, I turned around 2 seconds later and I was engulfed in flames.
In Florida, a driver died when fire broke out while he was refueling a Ford Airport shuttle. Neither vehicle had had its recall work performed. Ford says it has done more than the law requires to get van owners to bring their vehicles in for the repairs.
If the customer chooses not to come back, we really can't do much about that.
Ford's latest ambulance recall was to fix leaking coolant hoses, a separate problem that has caused 20 more ambulance fires this year. While Ford also blames this problem on poor maintenance, the nation's fire chiefs say what's needed is tougher federal enforcement of the recalls.
We've got to get it repaired because I believe that the public safety is jeopardized.
Critics say Ford isn't doing enough, but the company has spent more than 1 million man-hours on the recalls and believes the repairs work. Meantime, there are almost 250,000 of these vehicles on the nation's roads. Gary Reeves, CBS News, Detroit.
The Commerce Department today reported that orders for so-called big-ticket durable goods jumped 6% for the month of August. The category covers everything from washing machines to jet engines.
My books just left.
The new Subaru Justy gets you anywhere you want to go, less expensively than any other four-wheel drive car.
Mr. Potts, you're home.
Of course. What brings you out on a night like this, James?
Up to $1,000 cash back from Subaru means a great deal on a great car.
Now for indigestion, gas. Introducing new Extra Strength Malox Plus. It neutralizes more than any leading antacid and dissolves gas. Nobody does as much as new Extra Strength Malox Plus.
I don't intend to grow old gracefully. I intend to fight it every step of the way.
Oil of Olay.
This is the year I turn 30. Again.
Penetrating quickly, assuming the function of the natural fluid you lose as you age.
The big 3-0 is no big deal. I've been there. A few times.
Helping maintain fullness and softness, making your skin look younger.
I love being 30-ish and looking 20-something.
Why, I like new microwave stuffing from Stovetop.
It's so easy. I can make it with my eyes closed. You just mix it in its own dish, and zap! In 3 minutes, you get your favorite tasting stuffing. See?
New Stovetop microwave stuffing.
An underground group holding American hostages in Beirut sent out another message today, once again demanding a, quote, positive signal from the United States on the Palestinian issue. The note was accompanied by a photograph of 4 kidnapped professors from Beirut University. Meanwhile, the political system in Lebanon is heading for something approaching total collapse. Tom Fenton in London has more about that.
Lebanon tonight has 2 governments and no president. Another step down the road to anarchy in a country torn by civil war for 13 years. When his term expired last night without an elected successor, outgoing Christian President Amin Gemayel said he left the presidency with a deep sense of anxiety. That feeling was widely shared. Gemayel appointed a caretaker cabinet headed by the Christian army chief, but Muslim leaders insist the old cabinet headed by a Muslim is still the legal government.
We are the legal constitutional government. We are going to meet tomorrow under the leadership of Prime Minister Hus. They are illegals, the other side, and we are going to denounce it with all the means, legal means and political means.
The largely powerless parliament, which is supposed to elect a new president, remains deadlocked, while Syria, the United States, and various Lebanese factions try to pull strings behind the scenes. Meanwhile, life and death in Lebanon go on as usual. Funerals were held today for 3 Shiite Muslim leaders. They were killed instantly yesterday when gunmen raked their car with machine guns and rockets. Palestinian camps were pounded by Israeli warplanes in an area of southern Lebanon that has become a virtual free fire zone for the Israelis. The State Department today said Lebanon's failure to elect a new president could lead to more violence and even partition of the country. But Lebanon's governments haven't governed for years, and for all practical purposes, the country has been partitioned since the civil war began. The lack of a president could make things even worse. Tom Fenton, CBS News, London.
France, a Roman Catholic country, today became the first Western nation to approve the use of an abortion pill. A government official said the drug, known as RU486, worked 95% of the time in tests. French doctors can now prescribe the pill for women in the first 7 weeks of pregnancy.
I know choosing a medicine is an important family decision, but for me, it's also an easy decision. The day my son was born was the first time that I was given Tylenol. It took care of the pain without irritating my stomach like aspirin or even ibuprofen can. Getting Tylenol that day really impressed me. When a hospital gives it to you, that's the best reason of all to trust Tylenol. I know it is for my family.
Trust Tylenol, the pain reliever hospitals use most.
How do you figure your financial future? How do you get an advantage? Look for an edge. Look for a company that can sharpen your opportunities in mutual funds, pensions, IRAs, employee benefit plans, insurance, and much more. Look for the Principal Edge from the Principal Financial Group, one of America's largest, helping people with the fine points of their financial future. The Principal. Look for the edge.
Hey, McElroy, I thought you were from Illinois.
I am.
Only guys from Kentucky do that with their shredded wheat.
I've been doing this since I was a kid.
Here's how we do it in Brooklyn. First, we break them in half, and then we mash them to a pulp. Add some milk, maybe a little fruit gone.
Now, this unshredded wheat is great no matter how you eat it, because it's nutritious whole wheat with no added sugar or salt.
What do the guys from California do?
They float them.
Hundreds of protesting Korean students fought with police today in the worst street battle since the opening of the Seoul Olympics a week ago. The students are threatening to disrupt the games unless 3 of their leaders are released from jail. On the playing fields, the spotlight is on the traditional track and field events, especially the final of the men's 100-meter dash. Correspondent Mark Phillips reports on the clash of the speed merchants.
The Olympics, where the Brazilian track team provides musical accompaniment for games held in an atmosphere of friendly competition and goodwill. Maybe. But there's not much goodwill between Ben Johnson of Canada and American Carl Lewis. Lewis before the games.
Main thing is getting through the trials and getting to the games and getting that man back.
All right. That man has other ideas.
This time, Carl Lewis has to run my race this time. You gotta come and catch me.
The qualifying heats in the men's 100 meters, the glamour race at the Olympics. And this time it's not just a contest for the title fastest man on earth, it's a grudge match.
I'm not going to lose.
The rivalry goes back a long way, but particularly to the World Championships in Rome last year when Johnson upset Lewis in record-breaking time. This is not just a contest between the 2 fastest men who have ever run, it's a contest of styles, running styles. Johnson, who blasts out of the blocks and who works at it. Lewis, who starts slow but then flies to the finish. A contest of personalities, the shy Superman Johnson.
I'm going to do the best I can for the country and for the rest of us.
The loose-lipped Lewis, here talking about a Korean astrologer's prediction of the race.
Well, is this the same person that talked to Nancy Reagan? I mean...
A contest of marketability. Even in the cold Canadian winter, Johnson's a hot property.
He's awesome. I want to know what he eats.
Lewis, despite his 4 gold medals at the Los Angeles Games, did not cash in. The brash young athlete had an image problem.
There was all this talk about million-dollar deals and as big as Michael Jackson, and that played against him.
For Carl Lewis, the race is a chance at athletic and perhaps commercial redemption. For Ben Johnson, it's a chance to prove his world record run was no fluke. These games are 16 days long. There are more than 8,000 athletes competing. Yet the main event will take about 10 seconds and focus on just 2 men. Mark Phillips, CBS News, Seoul.
And that's tonight's CBS Evening News. Dan Rather. Bob Schieffer will be here tomorrow. I'll see you Sunday night for the Dukakis-Bush joint appearance. That'll be at 8 o'clock Eastern Time, 7 in the Central Time Zone. Until then, good night.
They are the defending SEC champions and ranked 4th in the nation. The Tigers of Auburn battle conference rival Tennessee tomorrow on CBS Sports.
This is CBS.
I'm John Lindgren, filling in for Chris Clark.
And I'm Brenda Blackman. Up next on Eyewitness News, will David Terry kill again? An expert witness says no. We will have a report.
Archaeologists visit a site once considered a prime dumping ground for Metro's trash in search of Indian graves. And the latest fad for Elvis Presley fans on plastic.
Those stories and more next on Eyewitness News.
We know 2 reasons why October will cost you more than September if you're going to buy a new truck. 1, your trade-in vehicle